audience is the thing you're thinking about and sort of grounding your media product on, here's a couple things that I learned. The first one is don't buy a CDP. It's a huge thing in the industry. Everyone's talking about CDPs and how you need to implement them. The truth is that CDPs, only about 10% from a Forrester study are actually successful, right? And it's because people buy them thinking that somehow the CDP will create new data for them. It will give them ways that they didn't have before. The truth is a CDP is just a way to organize your data. It doesn't do anything for you. If you don't have organized data, it can be a good process to go through to implement one. But the truth is, there are practices you can go through yourself with your own data without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a platform. And usually the amount of effort to organize your data will be there no matter what. And then you have to organize it with the platform, which is duplicate work. So if you can, avoid buying a CDP unless you know really why you're buying it and the specific act of having a CDP, either from how you pipe the data between places or where you store it or some other factor that's really important that you can't do yourself, then you can buy it. But I would advise, if you can avoid buying a CDP, avoid it. The other thing, if you're dealing with audiences, always assume you have less than you have. It's really easy to say, oh, we've got 10 million people coming to the site. We have a huge amount of audience. Well, when you start selling a media product, you have to start segmenting that audience. And you have to start sending it somewhere. So that audience might, you might have 10 million people, but when you send that data to Google or Facebook, you might only end up with 3 million that you can actually target. And then you have to take that 3 million and say, oh, well, I've got a customer that only wants to buy media in Chattanooga. Well, how many of that 3 million is in Chattanooga? And then again, using automotive as an example, right? If someone wants, oh, I only want Ford shoppers, right? Well, now all of a sudden you've got 30% of your actual audience targetable. You've only got a certain percent in Chattanooga, and then you've only got a certain percent of those who are shopping for a Ford. You may end up with less data than you have, or you think you have, and then you end up selling a product that you can't fulfill, and you need to start thinking about how do you make that up. So if you think you have a huge amount of audience, I would recommend being really rigorous about how you think about that. The other thing is, if you're using ad tags to capture audience and events, go server side, implement conversions APIs. It's really important. It's required in some cases. You're going to get a lot less data loss if you're doing a server side API integration than if you're using a tag. So work with your ad partners and make sure that you're thinking about that. And the last one is that email addresses don't necessarily equal targetable identity, right? If you think you have a ton of email addresses and you can use actual information that you think you have, the match rates to platforms on a single email address is going to be like 50%. Sometimes it may be 30. If you onboard a partner, you can get that to 70 or 80%. So if you're using PII, think about how to expand that, because it's not always what it seems like. So the overarching theme here is be pessimistic because you'll end up in a better place. I'd rather surprise myself with how well I can do rather than think I have something I don't. And then when you're designing the product, think about how your customers will segment your data and make sure you can fulfill that. And if you can't, onboard partners who can help you get there. So that could be a LiveRamp, that can be buying flat files from like an Infutor, that could be working with Experian or TransUnion or S&P. There are a lot of ways to expand your data in a way that's really valuable to your customer, but think about that ahead of time rather than having to add it in later.